I'm Rachelle Wilhite. I'm the designated broker of Best Choice Realty, and I want to welcome you guys today to our short sale training. We're going to be talking about short sales. I thought what better way to kick it off than to just get us a video. It's a 4-minute video, so we'll watch the 4-minute video, and then I have several slides we'll discuss today about the short sale process. So let's go for the first slide, Shannon. Yep, keep it going. There we go. Tony's a friend of mine. Tony is doing trainings for the Certified Distressed Property Expert. And so we're just going to watch just kind of a kickoff to kind of talk about short sales from 4 minutes to 8:24. So we're not going to watch the entire thing. If you do want to watch it, it is on YouTube and it's a 20-minute, and there's all kinds of training materials you can find. But I wanted to play this first.
Now, here's what I found out after many years.
You can hear it, Rachelle. You can see.
Yeah.
To do short sales, I have never seen an agent take a selfie or do a reel in front of a short sale. Hey, you see this home back here? People are losing everything, man. Yeah, it's for sale. Take advantage of their heartache. Come on down. I gotta tell you something. One of my good friends owns a luxury designation, and I envy him. Mine isn't sexy, but mine isn't crowded. This is an area for you to jump on. I came up with this meme because 2.5 years ago, when I bought the CDP course and designation, everyone thought I was crazy. People said, what are you doing buying a designation with foreclosures, man? We don't have foreclosures. There's no need for foreclosures because we have so much equity in the United. Have you heard that term already? Equity rich? Have you heard about how much equity Americans have in their homes? Well, tell me if this makes sense to you. Having equity and being able to afford your payments are two separate issues. Yes or yes? I don't care if you're sitting on $100,000 or $200,000. If you can't afford the monthly payments, if you fall behind on your payments, you can't tap that equity anyway. Now, here's the other thing I'm concerned about. Americans have been tapping the equity in their homes like ATM cards for the past 2 or 3 years, have they not? How many folks refinanced when it was only 2.5% interest? A lot. They refinanced more than once? A lot. Did they just take out new rate and terms? No, they pulled cash out? A lot. What has come back that was gone for many, many years? HELOCs, home equity line of credit. People are borrowing against their homes to pay their bills. And this concerns me, but it's also an area of opportunity. Please write this down or take a picture of it. It could change a lot.
This is true.
Your job is not to motivate sellers to sell.
Oh, we lost it, Shannon. Just jump right in here. Can you guys see my screen, Virginia? Thumbs up. Yeah. Perfect. So just a little bit of vocabulary. I liked his enthusiasm. He also talks about the riches are in the niches, which is what I wanted to talk about a little bit today. This is an opportunity. And just like my good friend over there at the CDPE said, he said that there is an opportunity here, and there really is. Every single mastermind group meeting that we've been to, I've been to Spokane, North Idaho, down in Tacoma, in Puyallup, and all the way up to Everett. What we're finding some of the top producers are saying is that they're identifying people that they're talking with, maybe their friends, their family, and there is that sense of they're tapping into their equity maybe a little bit too much, or they're not able to afford their monthly payment. And what that's going to cause in the next little bit of time, we're going to see a rise in short sales or foreclosures. There we go. Shannon, are you ready to go to the next slide? So what we're going to talk about today is just some of the basics to kind of get you the vocabulary and the training you need. This is not meant to be I could probably teach short sales and foreclosures for a couple days and still not tap into all the resources that are available to you. But my first home was a HUD foreclosure. So when my husband and I got married, and we bought a home together, not with some of the investments that I bought, but one of the first homes that I purchased was a HUD foreclosure. And the real estate agent that I worked with at the beginning knew nothing about the process. And so my hope is when we get done here at noon, that you will have at least a basic understanding so you're not going to be like that agent that I work with when I bought my first HUD home, because I ended up switching real estate agents and went with another real estate agent who walked me through the process of the HUD, from a buyer's perspective and also understanding the process from the seller's perspective. So the first vocabulary for those of you who are new to the business would be an NOD. It's called a notice of default. So you're going to want to write some notes down as I talk. I do talk fast, I will say, so I have listened to myself. I guess the good news is you don't have to, when you listen to the recording after, you don't have to speed me up to get to the key points, but definitely write some notes if you can. Pre-foreclosure is what we're going to talk about today, which is the time period between when the notice of default is given and the actual foreclosure. It's kind of that pre-area. It's that pre-foreclosure kind of section. We're going to talk about that today and how you can tap into those opportunities. A HUD, which is what I purchased, was an actual foreclosure. It had already been through the pre-foreclosure process, and then the government basically had it in the foreclosure list. And I purchased it from the foreclosure list, and it happened to be on the MLS as well. And we are starting to see more that are hitting the MLS. And this real estate agent I work with, it was not very good. At first, my first agent number one was horrible. She was not able to articulate the process. And so I ended up firing her and going with another real estate agent who was able to walk me through the foreclosure process. And then the REO, a lot of people get confused. What's REO? That is called, it's the acronym for real estate owned by, and it could either be owned by the lender. So some lenders have REOs or an REO division, or it's a foreclosure. The government owns it. An REO is a real estate owned by the lender. Basically, the mortgage company takes it back. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So these are some of the questions to get to that point. So as we think about Tony, and Tony was talking about the opportunities, the riches are in the niches, and that we have to identify those people who are in distress. It's not to motivate them. It's not to, send all this marketing out, but as we start to have conversations with our sellers, you may uncover in the next little bit of time some opportunities for you to give proper advice and help them with that process. So these are the questions that I've used, and I went through it, and I'm like, if I was going to go talk to a seller who was in a hardship, would I use these questions today? Absolutely. So the number one question is, your property already on the market? Some people have put it on the market. They don't put it on the MLS, but they might put it on like a wholesaler market. So that would be the first question, would be to ask them if they've put their property on the market. They might mean different things. The market to them might mean a wholesaler, or they might mean auction.com. There are some different websites that have been curated to help a seller potentially in the distress process. So number one question, is it listed with an agent? That would be the second, like a follow-up question. When was the property purchased? It's important to know when it was purchased. So if I was talking with Virginia, I'd say, when did you purchase your property? She says, well, I just purchased it a year and a half ago. Okay, so then it starts to I think about the equity at that point. If she only purchased a year and a half ago, there may not be enough equity. What did you purchase it for? Or what was the original price? Then I can fill that part in. Who is on the title? So that's an important thing to understand, because sometimes people get divorced. They go through some situations where they maybe are watching some late night TV infomercials that are telling them how to save their property, and they end up putting an investor on the title to try to help them. So number 4 is a very important question you want to ask them, is who is on the title? And they could say, oh, just me. Or I actually had my ex-husband, he put himself on the title, or we had this. It's important to ask that because what your job is to do after you talk with this potential seller or opportunity is to go in and do your research and contact the title department and find out if what they're saying is true. This might avoid a lot of hassles of you taking something that you know will never happen. It saved me a ton of time when I was doing it back in the years of 2009, 10, 11, and 12. The next question, number 5, is who is on the mortgage? There could be a different person on the title than the mortgage. And if they don't know, it's no problem. We will help you. We will identify and put you in touch with some people that will assist you. That's when you're going to want to get yourself a very good title officer that can help you with understanding what liens have been placed on the title and what mortgage company they're the lien holders that are attached to the deed. What kind of mortgage do you have? That's a good question that you can ask. And how many mortgages do you have? Sometimes they have more than one. So conventional, in the case of Tony, he mentioned that there's a lot of people tapping into their equity with the HELOC. And that is the case. And that would show up on the title report. If you pulled it, you'd see who has interest in the property. But ask the client, what kind of mortgage do you have? The next one would be, who is the lender? Who do you contact when you're making your payments? Who is that person? Write that down. Are you living in the property? Sometimes I talk with these people on the phone. So number 8 question is, are you living there? And if not, where are you living? And is the property being maintained? Sometimes you think, gosh, Rachelle, that's a bold question. There's a reason we ask these questions, because they're coming to us because they are having a situation where they trust you for the answers. And if you can guide them through, even though they sound kind of harsh, these types of people are very much willing to work with you. I've worked with people that have had health concerns, divorce, death, all kinds of challenges with their ex-spouse. And so if you go through these questions and you ask them in this sequential way, you'll be able to help them make some good decisions. And you'll be able to take a listing that is viable and that will be, I would say short sales are not for the faint-hearted, but you'll have a clear process that will help the process move along a lot more smoothly. What repairs are needed, you can jot those down. If you are relocating, so if they say, no, I'm living in the property, but I'm going to be moving to Spokane, for example, when do you have to move? So you can write that down. You can have some timelines, because what you're going to do when you get done with this questionnaire is then put them in touch with people that will help them and guide them through that process. Approximately how much do you owe? If they don't know, then we can guide them through the next step, which is to get a copy of a net sheet or an estimated payoff, and then create a net sheet for them. And then number 12, we would use we're dealing with condos. There are a lot of condo owners in the Western Washington region that are in a short sale situation. And I have a big heart for those, because I've done quite a few with health concerns where they have maybe purchased, they owe more than what their mortgage is. And then they have some sort of health thing that prevents them from going up and down stairs, or there is issues with a significant other and safety and security. And so those number 12, if you know that they're up to date with the condo association and how many months they're behind, that's also very helpful when you're trying to guide them through the process. So number 12 would be used for condo owners. Let's go to the next slide. So this is like, I broke it into 2 because these are the 23, 24 questions that I ask. Do you owe back taxes, or are there any liens on the property? Now we can identify that from the title report, but it's helpful if they happen to know that answer. Have you considered, or are you considering declaring bankruptcy? If the gap is so large, that might be their best path, is to seek an attorney to help them with the bankruptcy. So if they've considered that, let's put them in touch with some very, very viable people that can help them with that. Number 14. Number 15, are you current on all your mortgage payments, and will you be able to remain current? Not all people that are in distressed situations are late on their mortgage payments. That's kind of a fallacy. So there are people that consistently make their payments. There are close friends of mine who were making, even during the 2008, they purchased They got one of those, loans that were not good, and they were still making their payments, but the gap was over $100,000. And they had some sort of hardship that prevented them from selling, and there was no way for me to help them unless we were to go through the short sale process. So having an understanding on if they're current and if they want to remain current is helpful before we get them in touch with an attorney or we go through the short sale process. Number 16, I always ask this, are they considering a loan modification? I don't know what type of loan. I wasn't the one that was there many times when they've, signed their papers to do the loan. So you'll want to make sure that they are advised that, or you mentioned that to them, that they considered doing a loan mod. Number 17, do you have any other assets that would allow you to pay down or pay off the mortgage? Just by asking the question, they might say, oh, actually, grandma might help me. Or, I might have some sort of other assets that I could tap into. It may be helpful depending on where we go with the process to know what they have available. Most of the time of the people that I work with that are so far behind on their monthly payments, or they're in that distress type of situation, they don't have any assets that would help them pay down the mortgage. So most of the time on my questionnaire, as I look back at all my questionnaires, that was checked no. What lender correspondence have you received? Most of the time when they're getting letters, the NODs or the notice of defaults, they are receiving mail. And if they say that they have not received anything, they're lying to you most of the time if they're behind on their mortgage. So just ask them, what correspondence have you received? If they're the type of people who have them set aside for you, Rachelle, when you come to meet with me, I have all of these pieces of paper. I don't really know. I'm so stressed out. I'll tell them if they receive lender correspondence, just have that available for me when I come to meet with you to look at the property. Or could you send me a copy of the lender correspondence you've received so I could take a look at that? There's nothing wrong with asking that question, number 18. Number 19, what is the situation that caused you to miss or cause you to miss the payments or cause you this? And they'll say, my ex walked out on me. He went down to the Muckleshoot casino. He withdrew all of this money. These are real things that happened that just come to my head right now. There is a situation that will cause them to miss their payments. We had a health scare. My daughter had to get brain surgery. We had to go down to California because of the treatment, but then that was $150,000. We did a GoFundMe, and the GoFundMe didn't cover the amount, so we tapped into a HELOC to pay for some of the medical expenses. And you'll hear a lot on number 19. In fact, they don't give you enough space to write on the form that I use. Usually that's when I turn it to the back sheet and I'm writing down what is the situation that caused them to be in this distress situation. Number 20, what are your current payments, including taxes and insurance? By this point, you may already know that, and that's fine. What is your household monthly income? Number 21, and what is your estimated monthly expenses beyond the mortgage? And do you hold any security clearance? When I'm working in Tacoma specifically, because I'm down by the bases, number 23 I do want to ask that question because that would affect short sales, just foreclosures, those types of things, depending on the type of property they purchased and the type of loan that they have and the path that we put them on, it may or may not affect their security clearance. So if I know that they have a security clearance with JBLM, for example, I will want to know that on number 23. Okay, so those are the questions that I ask when I'm identify or if I found a potential seller who is in hardship or a distress situation, is I have a questionnaire, I go down the list, I write it down, and then I am at a point where I have to make a decision on whether I want to take this on, whether I want to refer it, whether I want to partner with another agent or with another attorney. And that's where we'll kind of go through today, is kind of explain that process from the buyer's point. But I wanted to give you kind of like a high level overview of what that looks like when I was taking on listings with sellers who I've identified are in a hardship or are in a position where I could help them. Sometimes they're too far gone, and then those are sad. But where can you find these? This is a real picture that I've taken That was a seller that we had that we worked with. But where can you find these opportunities? Um, I just did a quick search on some of the websites that I belong to. Realty Track, for example, there's 142 Realty Track listings right now, people that are sellers that are in distress. Foreclosure.com it says there's over 7,000 in Washington. So there are a ton, and it's rising. It's not going down, it's actually going higher. Auction.com only has 34 in Spokane, but you can find distressed properties on Zillow, on Realtor, Trulia. These are all the websites. The 4 or 5 of them are on the websites. And then you've got the county clerk's office and public records. All these websites sometimes scrape from that data source. It's what they call it in real estate school. You might want to look it up, but Liz Pendens that's been filed, basically a lawsuit that's been filed. It's public record most of the time in Washington, Idaho. So you can get this information pretty accessible. And then if you're not wanting to go direct and kind of hunt down some of these county websites, that's where a lot of these other websites will make you pay for the lists. And then because they curate it in a way that makes it easy for you to understand. But just realize that if you're on some of these websites and you're paying or you're part of that group, there are a lot of investors that are part of that group, but you have access to plenty of information where you can find and identify some of these sellers. Networking, social groups, those are the types of people that I run into when I'm networking or when I'm at a social event. Somebody may come up to me and say, "Hey, Rachelle, I know you were an investor at one time. Who do you recommend seeking? Or I'm kind of in this situation. Can you help me?" And then I will want to do a confidential meeting with them and actually talk with them maybe on the phone or do a Zoom and then go out and see the project. And that picture on the left is one of the projects that I actually took a look at. Banks, they have their own REO department. Remember, there's different departments at the bank. They're called an REO division, or they call it property disposal division sometimes. And there's all these different terms, but every bank has their own property disposal or these REO or short sale department that were established. Now, some of those companies have restructured and they maybe have only one person, but there usually is some sort of person or a department in each institution that handles these types of distress situations. You could do direct mail. Some of our brokers at Best Choice have sent direct mail pieces, and I do get phone calls sometimes from these unhappy sellers that say, "Why is your brokerage sending out these mailers?" So make sure that if you're concerned, if it's the first time you've ever sent a mailer out for a distressed homeowner, you may want to run it past me so I can see what you're sending out. You definitely want to have the solicitation clause in the bottom, because if it is listed by another brokerage, we don't want to be attempting to solicit another listed property. That's a rule violation. However, if you have the parameters in there and it's a very solid letter, there is opportunities that come to you when you send out direct mail. It almost happens, I think you have to send out several hundred in order to get one or two, but direct mail does work in these circumstances. Tax delinquent lists and driving around. So you could probably drive around your own neighborhood and you could see the grass is really tall. There's a situation where the home has been on the market or it hasn't sold for a long time. Those are opportunities that may come on. Let's go to the next slide, Shannon. Keep going next. There we go. Net sheets are your friend. So if you're in a situation with a seller or a buyer you're working with, and you're trying to figure out how we can make this work, I have this listing I just pulled up this morning in Brookdale. It's out there in Franklin Pierce area. It's listed for $599. It's been on the market for 411 days. And what's interesting to me about this one, looks like it's a Rambler, 2009, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. Looks like a pretty interesting property. I always look at these types of properties and I want to see the agent only remarks. And I highlighted the agent remarks, but it says seller may need up to 30 days possession after closing. So that's an interesting one. So it's probably the seller's living there, but the seller cannot net less than 0. So that's kind of cryptic, I would say, for that listing agent to write seller is to net no less than 0. This is where I may want to contact the listing agent and then use a net sheet to find out what is the mortgage balance, what is the commission rate? Am I willing to take less on my commission to make the numbers crunch so that the seller walks away with zero, and that the buyer gets a deal, maybe a 485. If I knew what the mortgage was on this, so I did the net sheet based off of the commissions that I think would be applicable. But this is where you kind of work sometimes backwards, where you go, okay, you're listed at 599. If we offered 485, you pay the realtor fees 12,000. Maybe we knock, a couple thousand off. We go 10,000, 10,000. Does that get the seller to net zero? 448. That's where I say it's kind of cryptic, and you do have to use your creative side of your brain to figure out if this deal will work for your buyer. So you can easily do a net sheet on Tycor Agent One. I have that on my phone. The Northwest MLS has an actual financial tools calculator. This is what I actually use for this slide. And the title company can also, if you're really wanting to make sure that it's zero, and you and the listing agent are having a conversation to truly make sure that it's zero and that the lien holder gets paid off and that all of the back taxes get paid off, you'll want to work very closely with the title company. So this one right here, CW Title and Escrow. Wendy, I know, has done a ton of short sales in the past. So we may have to involve Wendy earlier on in the process, and that's perfectly okay to say, hey, we've got a buyer, we've got a seller, we're negotiating a potential short sale. But could you run a preliminary closing statement so that we can assure the seller and the buyer that we are going to be making the lien holder whole, the seller's going to walk away with nothing, buyer's agent gets paid, listing agent gets paid, and then the buyer ends up getting a good deal. And this could be a good deal right here in Brookdale if we can get the numbers to work the way they need to. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Looking at some more listings, this one's on Hilltop. I always look at the agent-only remarks. I need you guys, if you are taking short sale listings, please do a better job and give more information. It's very hard for agents. Many of you have joined the real estate world in the last 5 to 6 years, so you have not experienced the short sales and the foreclosure process. And so I think that's where more education needs to be coming from, is how to properly list these properties. That's what as I looked at 50 or 60 this morning, it's kind of what I saw, is that many people need to do a better job. But the top one, it says key box is on the left side of the gas meter. Okay, that's nice to know. We got the Old Republic, so at least I have a good person I can run a net sheet and kind of make sure that we got the fees set up right. It says offer contingent on bank approval short sale. So what that means is it's probably in the early stages of the short sale process, meaning it's not a foreclosure yet. It's in that window where there's probably a notice of default that has been given, and we're in that window of time where we need to negotiate and make sure that the lien holder, that the bank is also approving of the sale. So you can see they start usually at 579, and then you see the price drop and the price drop. That is quite normal in the short sale process. Most lien holders will want to see it on the marketplace for a longer period of time. They are not concerned about the days on market if you're in a short sale situation. They actually want to see that you've properly marketed it, that we could get the maximum price that we possibly can. So this agent probably started 119 days ago at 579 at the market price, and then worked their way down with price reductions. That's very common. If you're working with a lien holder, if you're a listing agent, you may want to talk with that property disposal department or the lien holder department, that the short sale division, and ask them what is the amount of time that we want to have the listing, and how frequently can I drop the price to get to the buyer who is willing to pay. And they'll sometimes have parameters they'll give you every 2 weeks, every month. We want to see a price reduction, or we want to drop 3 to 5% so that we attract a new audience. To have a good open conversation. So knowing that we're 119 days in and we're now at 499 on this particular property, I will probably need to ask some questions with the listing agent, and I do have some questions that I'll give you guys on that property in Hilltop so that we could get it under contract. But it would take, if I was looking and advising any of you today and you were my buyer, I would say that this is going to take several months. Set the expectation, it will take several months. It's not going to be a typical 30-day close on this one. It'll take several months, but you may get a good deal, and that's what I will tell my buyer. So if we write this one today on Hilltop, we can also write it in such a way where we can exit if we find a better deal. But why not write an offer if you are not in a hurry to get to get into a house or do a 1031 exchange? The Hilltop property may be a good opportunity for us to get, put pen to paper, get your buyer into the offer stage of writing an offer. Meanwhile, we're going to continue to look at other opportunities, but let's go ahead and write an offer and let's see if we can get that to work, as long as they're not in a hurry. The next one on the bottom is the setting expectations. So if I look at this one on the bottom, it says the short sale is being negotiated by Marine View Law. Many short sales are negotiated by law firms. And what that typically means is there's so many liens or so much going on with the title report that there's a negotiator that's been assigned to the file to assist the real estate agent or the listing agent in the process. I personally have negotiated many short sales in the past. I would say that, this one right here with Marine View Law would be probably one looking at the title report where I would say, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and involve an attorney. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of waiting on the phone to negotiate with multiple lien holders. If there's two liens, I usually use a negotiator to negotiate the second. But if it's one lien holder, one mortgage, hardship, I usually can negotiate that myself. But when there's a lot going on with the property or the liens, that's where you might want to partner with a law firm to help you. There is a 1% SS, it says short sale, that's what that means, negotiator fee that will be paid to Marine View Law, and the sale is subject to the lien holder approval. So its previous offer was accepted, but backed out prior to inspection. I love how this listing agent put that on there. Previous offer accepted, but backed out prior to inspection. So that's an example where if you are the listing agent and you are receiving offers, it is okay. You want more than one offer because buyers will flake out a lot in the process and waiting for the lien holder to approve the sale. So we have to wait just like we would if we were waiting for a pre-approval for the lien holder to actually get back to us on whether this purchase and sale agreement is approved, whether they'll agree to take the loss and write it off. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is an example of a law firm. This would be a supplement that would typically show up. It says that in the supplements, the clients may need to sign. If you do see this, like there's a 1% negotiator on Marine View Law, most likely they'll have something just like this that you would have to agree to pay. So the buyer can pay that, or the listing agent can pay that, or the buyer's agent can pay that. And it is negotiable. The buyer fees for the law firms to handle the short sale process, they'll usually have an agreement like that to sign. Let's go to the next slide. Some more, I wanted to make sure you get a few that we can talk about. This is an approved short sale. So the agent remarks on this one, well, I would hope so, for 276 days on market, that this short sale is approved. What that means is that the lien holder has approved the terms, but they've indicated the terms. So it started at $399 and they got it down to $385 and they got the lien holder to say, yes, I want to approve it. No buyer credits. Buyers must bring cash to close for the negotiator fee of $7,000 and $7,300 to be allocated for the second lien for a total of $15,000 cash to close, meaning the buyer will have to come up with $15,000 to close it. But it is approved by the lien holder, meaning $385 is the price that they'd have to get. Still, it says call LA, call listing agent with questions. You may want to call them because that's still not enough information to be able to know how to write up an offer. So we want to ask more questions so that we can properly write the offer and win. I'll explain that in a minute. The bottom one, it says the power is off. A lot of times you're going to find this happen as we go into the fall and winter market. You're going to want to be very careful and cautious when you're entering short sales because a lot of times they turn the power off. And then you have to use big mag flashlights. My husband just got a big flashlight for his birthday. And I was like, good, I'm going to take that one because I love those big flashlights for looking at properties like this. They're huge. You need a good light to see some of these properties. It says it's subject to lien holder and bankruptcy court approval. A lot of short sales are also bankruptcy sales. And they can't finance those bankruptcy fees. That's one thing you'll know with bankruptcies when you work with them. 20,000 cannot be financed. You can't finance that carve out or that fee. So when you're running into those types of situations, the best thing to do would be to call me or call one of our staff members who can assist you on how to properly write the offer, because sometimes this will not work for your first time home buyer. They won't be able to spend $20,000. They won't have that in addition to their closing costs or their down payment. They just don't have the funds to be able to make that work. So if your client's like, I want a really good deal and I found this property, it's going to be perfect for me and it meets my budget, and you see $20,000, you're gonna have to really educate them on the process that bankruptcies unfortunately are regulated in such a way where they do not, you can't finance that carve out or that bankruptcy fee. That 20 grand has to be cash, and it has to be available at closing. So it's not something that we can finance. Let's go to the next. So you've got a few more lingo things. BPO, that's a term that you probably need to memorize, is called a broker price opinion. It's one of our colleagues out there in the field who will essentially do a CMA and give that to the lien holder, so the lien holder knows how to price, or educate those listing agents to drop the price to get a secure deal or to get, less they have to write off on their loss. A BK is called a bankruptcy. So if you see that BK, that's usually what that means, is a bankruptcy. SS, usually a short sale. Lien holder approval is what a short sale needs in order for them to go through. Or they also call it sometimes third party approval. And that's when it gets closer to the foreclosure. I've noticed that sometimes that lingo changes. And you may want to involve a negotiator on the short sales if you're having some difficulty or that listing agent is not getting what you need. You might want to advise that we get a negotiator involved so that we can get approval on the short sale. Those are some tips that I've learned over the years. Let's go to the next slide. These are some of the best questions. So yes, take a picture. I see Zelly. She's taking a picture. I love it. Zelly, bring it on. You want to take some questions, take a picture. These questions are the best questions you want to ask. When you see a short sale like some of the ones I pulled up earlier this morning, the number one thing you can ask when you call the listing agent, so you sound like you're educated on the process, would be, who is the lien holder? Who is the bank? Oh, it's First Point. Oh, it's ABC. Oh, it's Wells Fargo. Oh, it's whatever bank. It's nice and helpful to know what lien holder we're working with. We do have, every bank, every lien holder has a rap sheet. I personally know sometimes just by the bank or the lien holder how long things are going to take. Has the bank chose an offer? That's a good one. So one of the agents in the remarks actually said they chose an offer and then the other offer fell through. So when you call that other agent, that listing agent, has the bank chose another offer on that one? Because they may have already got that process going. And that doesn't mean that you can't write an offer and be the winning offer. It just helps you know how to structure your offer or educate your buyer on how to write it. So number one, I love that question. Number two, do you have 100% complete short sale package into the lender? And then that's kind of like making me, it's a little condescending. If you have to be like me where you can be kind of cocky about that because I've done enough. But I will, if there's a short sale and there's one of the agents that has, I think 4 or 5 short sales currently on the active market, I personally trained her. So I have no problem saying to her, I won't use her name, I almost did, but do you have a 100% short sale package into the lender? And if she says, no, I'm still waiting for the BPO, I'm still waiting for the bank statements that they're providing, the seller's providing, at least if it's not 100% complete, what items are you still trying to work on to get a complete package over to the lender? There's a lot that has to be collected in order for the short sale to be approved. That I can tell you. It's almost like, if I could give a seller, it's almost like they're getting pre-approved for the loan. When they're working with the lien holder to get the approval on the sale, they have to provide them with just about as much stuff as if they started the process to get the loan. To get out of the loan is just about as much stuff. They're going to need bank statements. They're going to need payoffs. They're going to need all of that. And they'll have to complete that within a timeline, so that the lien holder doesn't put the package on the desk and work with another one. So if the listing agent has 100% package into the lien holder and they've got everything they need from the homeowner or the seller, is a more likely opportunity that will go through if you're writing an offer on that property. Number three, has the negotiator or loss mitigator been assigned? So if you're working with Marine View Law or some of these other law firms, that number three, obviously you don't need to ask that. But if it's not, if it's cryptic or you don't know, ask them. Has the mitigator been assigned to the file? Um, and if it hasn't, then you'll know it's going to take a while. That's what that means. Number four, can you tell the date of the notice of default? When was that last posted? It is public record, so I will make you aware of that. You can usually find that information if you're looking at the title correctly. Um, but if it's over 60, if it's 60 days old, the chances of success usually drops and significantly. So you kind of have to know, you kind of have to gauge it off of your notice of default. So if you know the date of the notice of default, that's very helpful. Or if you know how to find that, so you don't have to ask the question. But if I was just going to call one of those agents, they would probably know. They could tell me the date, and they would be able to advise me on how to structure my closing date or my offer. And number five, has the BPO been ordered? Or has there been an appraisal done recently on the property? There is nothing wrong with asking number five. Ask it all the time. And does the home qualify for conventional financing? If I'm going to be doing, and that one that I showed you guys on the bankruptcy, probably won't qualify for FHA, but it could qualify for conventional as long as my client can pay the carve out fee, the 20 grand. So I'd have to make sure that my lender knows about that, but that could go conventional, and then we have a winner for an offer. So those are the questions. For a short sale to be approved, it must have a hardship. So I have seen listing agents spin their wheels like crazy over the years and doing all this work, meeting with the seller, and then finding out that, uh-oh, it went to foreclosure, or it just never would have gone because A, the seller wasn't willing to provide you with the information or had the information, or B, they were not in a true hardship. So those are the top hardships that I've dealt with in the past: excessive debt, taxes that they've owed, divorce, death. Most of the time, it's a combination of a couple of these things that prevent them from making a profit. But it's usually one of those things, and it has to have a hardship. The bank or the lien holder has to see um, relevant hardship. It can't just be, oh, I bought and then I changed my mind and I didn't make my payments. And so, but there's no hardship. If there's no hardship, they're not going to approve it. And you've wasted a lot of time. In some cases, 200 plus days. Enlisting, marketing, photography, all of that could be a waste of your money and your time. So make sure that it is truly a hardship, and that you have contact and you have the seller willing to work with you, because if they do work with you, having it go through the short sale process will often be better than if they were to just walk away and go through foreclosure. It's a lot easier to not affect your credit score if you do the short sale versus you go through the foreclosure. So that's the benefit. But it does take a bit of working with you as the agent to make sure that it's going to work. Let's go to the next slide. There is an advisory in Washington. Every seller and buyer must have a pamphlet. This is the pamphlet that's required in the state of Washington. Heads up, I have fired an agent who did not do proper short sale advisory. This individual is still licensed. I did look him up to see if he is still licensed. He's still licensed out there, and he's doing a very poor job of representing his firm, because I know he's still doing this. He's going out there as a wholesaler. You get all these kinds of different words, but he's not doing his proper advisory because he is licensed as a real estate agent. Because you're licensed, you're required to advise anybody that's going through a short sale about what a short sale is and what are their rights and what are their legal obligations. This obviously has a few more pages attached to it, but this is how it looks. And I believe it's in the P series in the Northwest MLS. There is a disclosure, and you must use the disclosure when you're working with sellers in distress situations. The clue that you would find is that when you pull up the title, you see a ton of liens or you see a ton of mortgages, or you talk with them, there's definitely a hardship. and then they bought or they owe more on the property than what you could probably sell it for, those are some signs where you probably want to get this printed or emailed over to them so that you are doing your job. Advisory is required. There's no way around it if you're licensed in the state of Washington. Then we have a checklist. So some of you are like, okay, well, what do I need to do? What are the forms? How do I write this? If I have an opportunity like one of the ones I showed you on the screen earlier, I want to write this one up. Can I do that? And yes, you can if it's a short sale. If it's a foreclosure, then it's usually you're going to use the bank's foreclosure paperwork. And unfortunately, we can't advise on that paperwork. But if it's a short sale, it's very simple. There are some additional addenda you'll need to use, like the 22 section F, 22SS on the cheat sheet here. You'll need a 22SS addendum, and then you'll still include all of these other addenda just like you would in a normal sale, but there is a 90SS that I'll show you here in a minute that would be used for the consent. And so there is 2 additional addenda, 22SS, and then later on in the transaction, we would use a 90SS. So you want to kind of keep those 2. I should have highlighted them for the training here today, but 22SS and 90SS, write those numbers down, and you're probably going to want to look into them a little bit more deeply if you're going to write. But this is the addendum, the 22SS. It clearly says that what a short sale is, number 1. A short sale is a transaction where the seller's creditor is agreed to accept less than what the amount is to secure the property. It means the lien holder is going to have to write off the debt or a portion of the debt. So that's what number 1 explains, kind of explains what a short sale is to the homeowner or the buyer potential. Number 2 is the contingency. So the contingency, it says 60 days. So you guys are going to look like you're very smart and educated by Best Choice Realty if I tell you that the questions that we went over earlier, those 5 or 6 questions that you can ask the agent, if you've asked good questions, like, for example, have the BPO been done, or has there been appraisal on the property, or has the lien holder had a full package submitted, you're going to know what date to put in here on number 2, because you're not going to put a closing date on your first page of your purchase and sale agreement. That's an error that many of you make when you write these short sales. Number 2, you're going to want to put in what you and the listing agent have determined as the contingency. How long is it going to take for that lien holder to give approval? It might take me longer than 60 days if I just started the process today. It's going to take me a while to collect all the documentation, get the BPO ordered. They may require appraisal, or they may require it to be on the market for a period of time so they can see the drop in prices. So there's a reason why we need to ask the questions so that we know how to write the offer. But 60 days would be the default. Now, if we wrote 60 days in, that means that we would get the lien holder approval and we still would have to 30 days to close. So when I talk about short sales, they're definitely not short in time frame. It takes several months sometimes to get these to go through. So if you have one, have I cut the 60 days down? Yes, there is one of the 4 that I showed you guys on the screen that I probably could talk with the listing agent, and I could probably get that timeline cut down on number 2 to 30 days. But if you have not spoken with the listing agent and you're just trying to get in play, leave it at 60 days unless you've talked with them and you really want to structure it so that it looks really good to the lien holder. And if we have, the BPO's done, all these things are ready to go, and it's at the point of lien holder approval, then why not, right? Change that from 60 to 30 days. That keeps your buyer happy, but you may want to leave the default. I'd say most of the time I see the default 60 days, and then I see extensions on that because of all of the paperwork that has to be collected. Number 3, it says the seller may accept offers from other buyers. So that's why you're going to have to really go through this offer with your buyer and make sure that they understand that we need to keep looking. We don't want to just write an offer and just hope and pray that we're going to be the winning offer, because at the end of, say, 60 days, the lien holder says, we actually accepted another offer. That can happen. The seller can accept other offers to purchase, essentially in backup. So you have to come to the table with basically your highest and best on the price and the best terms. You only get one stab at this typically. So you want to tighten up things, tighten up contingencies, make sure that they're pre-approved with the lender, do all the things you would normally do with a regular purchaser. You just want to make sure that you only have one stab at this. Most of the time, you're not going to get the counter offer back and forth because that person on the other side is in a distressed situation and they're already doing a ton of paperwork for their lien holder to get the lien holder to approve. The chances of them wanting to go back and forth to counter your sloppiness is not going to happen. You're going to need to make sure that you really think about the form and fill it in correctly. So number 3, because they're going to accept other offers. If the other offer is better, it's cleaner, it's got less contingencies, it's got a better price, they're most likely going to go ahead and bump you, and they'll put the other person, hopefully a best choice agent, in place, and give you that 90 SS saying we've approved, the lien holder is approved, and we're going to move forward with the sale. So that's ultimately what you want. But that's because number 3 allows them to collect backups. Number 4, the termination by buyer. So you've got 2 boxes that you can select here. You've got the may or the may not terminate this agreement at any time. The default is may if not filled in. So that means that you could write an offer today on one of those short sales, and then you could go look at another house and then send the listing agent a termination, and there's nothing that needs to be done. Basically, the buyer, it was written in such a way where it protects the buyer and protects the buyer's earnest money. So the termination, while number 3 is more in the seller's favor or the lien holder's favor, number 4 is actually written in the buyer's favor, where the may is the default. Now, if you're in a situation where you know that there's going to be multiple offers on this short sale and the lien holder is already approved, the termination for buyer, you may want to opt to select that you may not back out, meaning you're good to go. You want this, you're going to be competitive. And so I have been able to be very smart in how you look at this and the questions you ask. And the termination by buyer means that they still could have contingencies, but they can't use the short sale contingency as a way to terminate the deal. That's what that means in term 4. So default is fine if you're early on the process, but if you've got lien holder approval and you're really trying to get it for your client, you may want to opt to switch that box on number 4. Number 5 is the computation of time. So this essentially changes the terms throughout the entire document on computation of time. So it's important to know if you're going to be checking some of these boxes. If you check none of the boxes, all of the defaults for computing the timelines, it starts when you get the consent from the lien holder. If you check the boxes, it amends it, meaning that you're going to have the computation start upon mutual acceptance, not on the lien holder consent. So this also is another area where number 5, if you know that the lien holder has approved and you're trying to get it for your client, you may want to obviously deposit the earnest money. That shows you're serious, right? And you may want to also have passed your inspection and passed your finance contingency, or you've passed all these contingencies. You check the boxes so that when the lien holder gets to their desk, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's already done with all of his contingencies. There's no more contingencies. That all we have to do is approve the sale and we're on to the closing date. So computation of time, generally speaking, if we're early on the process, we leave it all blank. If we are lien holder has approved, like there's 1 out of the 4 that I showed you where the lien holder has approved, then you could check the box deposit earnest money. It's going to commence, or it's going to begin once you get the seller to approve, not the lien holder to approve. So that's how that works in number 5. The computation of time is amended. Number 6 says that the closing date, again, this is why we don't put a closing date on page 1 of the purchase and sale, because it's referencing closing right here on the 22 SS. It says the closing date shall be 30 days if not filled in after lien holder consent. So, which will supersede the closing date that's provided in the agreement. Or if you guys did extensions or you had somebody did a very, very sloppy job on the contract, I don't put a closing date on my first page. I usually just type in C22SS. And then that way they understand that I understand the addendum. And the addendum basically says that I'm waiting for lien holder consent. Once lien holder consent, we will close within 20 days, 15 days, however much time the lender needs. If I'm getting financing or if I'm cash, I can close in 7 days once the lien holder approves. So that's how you use the closing date. That's the area number 6 is where you negotiate the closing date once the lien holder approves the sale. Implications, the parties acknowledge this addendum does not fully explain all the implications of the short sale. This is kind of like putting you putting you out of harm's way. And then obviously number 8, it references a 90SS, which I have on the screen. I think I have 2 minutes left. So go ahead, Shannon, let's go to 90SS. The 90SS is pursuant to Form 22SS. Anytime you have a 22 in Washington or you have all these addenda, there is usually a notice. Notices are, I wish they would do 90R. That would have been nice, but they didn't. They do have a 90R, but that's for the well. But most of the notices, notice of terminations, notices of removal of contingencies, notices like that are in the 90 series. So those of you that are new to the business, those are all where the 90s, if you go in to look at the forms, all the forms that Washington produces, 90SS is the form you'll need to communicate. So for example, if you're the listing agent and you got the lien holder to approve, you will have only a period of time to submit this 90SS to the buyer, to the buyer's agent, and then that will trigger them to do all of their contingencies and their timelines. So this is your go card, if you will. It also is the same way to communicate if, for example, we need to terminate. The notice of termination is also the same 90SS. So say we wrote the 22SS, we wrote the offer, we love the short sale, and next week we find another property that's better. We, as buyer's agents, we would use the 90SS as well, and we would check the box at the bottom that's pursuant to term 4, where we reserve the right to terminate and get our earnest money returned to us if we had deposited it. But basically, we can terminate using the 90SS. So it's the consent and it's also the termination all in one agreement. And so it kind of keeps it all on one page. Before we had several different documents we were working with. In 2011, they changed it and just gave us one document. But it is confusing if you're trying to figure out, well, which hat am I wearing? Am I wearing the buyer's agent's hat or am I wearing the listing agent's hat? And when do I need to send this over? If you have questions about when to send the 90SS over, please call me or text me so I can look at what lien holder said to you so that we know if we got official approval. Usually they send you a letter that says we've officially approved and we've confirmed that this purchase and sale agreement is the winning offer. And then you'll know that you need to deliver the 90SS to the buyer's agent. Okay. Just a quick mention on foreclosures that there was a Foreclosure Fairness Act that did change in 2011 that changed. It's important to note about the notice of defaults. Everything got changed. It basically gave buyers and homeowners a bit more time to make some additional arrangements. If you have questions, law firms are the best people to talk about foreclosures because they handle foreclosures a lot. There are classes that they offer, McFerrinlaw.com. They offer some excellent classes. I've taken some classes. If you're like wanting more knowledge than what I've shared with you today, go into McFerrinlaw.com. They have an education portal and they always have foreclosure or distressed property education that they do for clock hours. It might be a good idea to take some classes. I know that they have listed a few more that would be awesome for you to take. So that's anything in Washington. They cover basically the Washington Fairness Act, and they also cover the foreclosure process. So if you're kind of like, I covered today more of like the pre-foreclosure process because we're starting to see more opportunities creep up like that. But if you're wanting more training on foreclosures, it's a whole realm, it's a whole nother set of education about foreclosures. Okay, I think that's it. I think one more. If you're dealing with REOs or foreclosures, these are the questions that you could ask. So if you could see it's a foreclosure, it's listed as a foreclosure. Things like repairs, will the lender allow or will the bank allow us to do repairs if the appraiser calls them out? Will the lender or the seller, is there a process to get the utilities turned back on? Are there offers into the bank already? Have you had any accepted offer fall through and why did it fall through? And does the home qualify for, say, a hard money loan? Or do I have to can I do a 203K rehab loan? There are different types of REOs or foreclosures that just by talking with the listing agent, you might have a winning match, right? Where the buyer matches the seller situation. These are the questions that I ask the REO or the foreclosed properties. Different than the short sales though. Okay, that was a wrap. I did pretty good, Shannon, for 12 o'clock. I talk fast, I know. Thanks, Zelly. Zelly's taking pictures, so that's great. And I believe we did record. So if you do need to pull up and screenshot some of the things, we will have the recording available. Were there any questions that I didn't cover? I will open it up for some questions. I do have some time. Candace or Shannon, did you guys get any questions as I was talking?
Yeah, there's a couple here. I'll just run through a few of them. I think you may have answered this, but how do inspections work on short sell? I think it comes down to the timelines, right, Rochelle?
Yes, so, but I will expand on that a little bit more. So the short sale inspection, when you're in a short sale situation, seller does not have money. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Most of the short sales I've worked on, they say as is, seller to do no work orders. Having known that, we always, as buyer's agents, want to advise that the buyer do their inspection. So there are pre-inspections that you could do. Most listing agents, if they're smart, will allow you to go in there and have your buyer do a pre-inspection. Your buyer's probably gonna be putting up $400 or $500, but I wouldn't want them buying something that's a money pit, especially a first time home buyer. So always advise that they get an inspection. That way, when you do write the offer, you could do a 35W and waive the inspection or do a pre-inspection, check that box because, can we do it? Yes, you can negotiate after the lien holder approves. That might be the best case. That might be the only offer that listing agent receives. So again, knowing some questions, but always advise that your buyer do an inspection. It's just a question of when. When do we do the inspection, right, Shannon? And it's
Yeah.
negotiable, and you got to know the other side and what they're working with to know whether that's possible or not. Okay.
Yeah. And I think just typing on timelines. I mean, in many cases for a buyer, there's not very much risk to submit an offer on a short sale. It's
No.
usually a good deal. You don't have to even deposit earnest money or do inspections until you get lien holder approval. I
Right.
mean, what's the harm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point.
Can the buyer loop the short sale negotiator costs into their loan, or is that an out-of-pocket cost they have to have?
Great question for the lender. So that would need to be asked to the lender. Is there
Uh,
any lenders on the call today that could answer that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. Um, yeah, and having a question about financing contingencies. So if the contingencies, I'm not sure how this would apply in, but having financing contingency longer when you have a short sale contingency.
If you have a short sale contingency and a financing contingency, that is common. If as long as there's no other offers that come in, I mean, you could get beat out by a cash offer. So I would highly recommend you get your financing, your lender on board and collect all that information and make sure you've got, but you can have a financing contingency that runs in tandem with the short sale contingency. That's not uncommon to see.
Okay.
Did that answer that question, Shannon?
I
I
think
don't
so.
know.
Yeah. So I think those are all the questions that came through.
So you can't have a 22A and you can't have a 22SS. No problem. That's very common. Okay. Candace, anything from you? Virginia?
No, that was good. That was good.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a refresher. Hopefully the questions helped. I think that's you're like a lot timid, like if you don't know how to ask the questions. That's I think the biggest thing I see. It's like the deep end of the ocean. Jump in. The water is warm, but it's going to be deep and wide. Jackie, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thank
Okay,
you.
you're welcome. David, get your hands up.
Yeah, I typed in a few questions in the chat there, Rochelle.
Okay.
One was, can we have, will the PowerPoint be available to us? This
I can send
PowerPoint?
that PowerPoint. Sure.
Okay, I'd like a copy if that's okay, please.
Yep.
And then also, is McFerrin Law still handling short sales besides other than Marine View Law? Do you have any other attorneys?
There was a couple that I mentioned on the call today. You just have to kind of, I don't think McFerrin is doing it. I don't know though. Somebody told me a while ago that they're not.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
think there's a lot of attorneys that handle short sales. I think you just have to identify one and roll with it.
You know anyone else besides Marine View Law?
The other, I have another one that I posted that in the package, Shannon, if you want to just put that in the chat, that would be great. I have their letter. Yeah, there's a few, David. They're not as common. There's not as many. And Ed McFerrin retired last I heard, and so that's why that would be my first choice because we did a ton with McFerrin back in the day. But there's a few that handle it and they do a great job of negotiating through some of the issues.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anything else?
Question.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Good.
Yes, go ahead, Tatiana.
No, I just need to first heard that. Where exactly did people find those short sales and reels?
Oh, okay. I could show you where I went in the MLS. That might be helpful. But you have to probably go back to the slide and there's plenty of places, lots of websites. If you
Okay.
Google searched it, you've come up with probably 20 that you could,
Okay, got it.
yeah, you could find short sales and foreclosures. MLS is probably the first place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, if you could just pull up the MLS real quick, I'll walk through how to do that.
There's a field for third-party approval.
Uh-huh.
So it might be a field you have to add into your MLS. I don't think we need to share it, Rochelle, but it's
I've
in
got
a
it here.
third-party approval field.
It's pretty easy. So I'll go back to my criteria. Can you see this okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I put in, you put your zip code, you put whatever you want, right? And then down here, there's additional fields. It says
Mm-hmm.
third-party approval required, none
Uh-huh.
other short sale. There's some options. So I can click on that. There's 250 right here.
Okay.
So that's a short sale. Wow,
Mm.
it's pending.
Wow, looks nice too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is in the process of basically we're waiting for the lien holder to approve and the 90 SS to be sent. That's where we're at with this one.
Mm-hmm.
But it says, as is short sale, no repairs, subject to bank approval. Okay, that's a great one though. Beautiful property in Longview.
Mhm.
Okay, hopefully that
Mhm.
helped.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
Tatiana, for the question. You bet.
I
All
got
right,
it.
you guys. Well, hopefully
you so
this was
much.
helpful. Thank you so much for jumping on our training, our power hour. We're going to do another power hour next month, uh, September 11th. So kind of mid-month. If you're wanting some more deeper education, I've got a good friend of mine who's going to be joining me, and she's going to be talking about price reductions on September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a top coach. If you guys know Debbie DeGroat, she and I will be doing the power hour on September 11th. So if you want to mark your calendar for that, it will be a very good session that we'll talk about that. Okay. All right. Have a good week. Talk to you guys later.
Thank,
Good luck.
thank you.